and a prepared presentation that no one had any questions about. So Greg told you a little bit about my background, judging from who's on the online here. I've had many of you in one, if not two of the classes that I teach. So I know a little bit about you. You know a lot about me. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to open it up for questions. And if you really want to, I can launch into my discussion about gateways, which I really call gateway drugs, but I didn't know if that would be appropriate. So your questions and my answers. Oh,
Jeanette, can you see the chat? Because some people are chatting in questions for you. Okay.
Yep. So Patrick just told me I'm fading a bit. Let me know if I'm fading a bit. And Sharia had asked to give you a summary of what I was going to talk about. So I had proposed two different topics. The first one was on something I called gateway drugs, and it's looking at basic models of instructional design and how you can use them to create more compelling, more sophisticated learning events. And I was thinking about that as the course title implies, managing in the training environment. I'm not getting that exactly right. And how to manage teams to perform better. So that was one topic I thought we could look at or talk about. How do you take rudimentary design principles that we've all learned, Gagne, Bloom's, Claude Christensen, Kirkpatrick, how do you take these sort of entry points into the profession of workplace learning and build on them to make your teams perform better? So that was one idea. And another idea I had was to talk to you about positive deviance. They're saying I keep fading out, so can you hear me now?
Yeah, the other option you have is to use the phone audio.
Is that better? Do you find that that's better?
It's more stable than the computer because it's not internet based.
Okay, let me.
If you click on the little radio button under where it says audio and click on telephone, it has the.
Right, I just think I'm gonna get some headphones.
Okay.
You would think that in Northern Virginia, metropolitan Washington, D.C., we'd have excellent internet connections all the time.
You would think, yes.
One would think.
Okay, folks, I guess we're on hold a little bit here while Jeanette tries to connect via the telephone. I see she's chatted that she's dialing in, so if we can just be patient and wait for it to run its routine, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Audio.
Jeanette, are you there? Jeanette, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Sounds much better.
Okay. Everybody else, is that better? Much better. Thanks, Beverly. Oh, hi, Beverly. Oh, look at all these people saying yes, thank you. Yes. Oh, Denisa, I don't know you. Okay, good. All right, so I was saying, maybe just to myself earlier, that I had proposed a topic on sort of maturing rudimentary models of design to help your teams perform better, design more sophisticated solutions. That's something we can talk about. I don't have any slides prepared, but I'm happy to talk about that. And the other topic that I had proposed was, hi Larry, thank you, was on positive deviance, which again I don't have prepared, but is based on the work of Atul Gawande, who I think is the most brilliant mind of our current day, and his book, Better. If you haven't read it, I recommend reading it. And he talks about a framework for how to be, quite simply, better, and it involves 5 simple steps. That is probably not something I could just talk to you about off the top of my head because my book is at work, but I'd be happy to come back and talk to you about that if you like that topic. So, topics and questions, how would you like to proceed? That's a question.
Folks, I think this is the audience participation part of the program.
Okay.
Jeanette, it's Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
How's it going?
It's going great.
With the topic I guess that had been proposed with the integration of the learning theorist, I kind of want to know what one that you've seen or favor in kind of a team management scenario, kind of which one you personally think works.
All right, so here is my answer to that. I don't think any of them work. And I think that's the problem with workplace learning. And Greg did say that I have a lot of passion around this topic, and I do. Because what I see happening is people take these models, which are good models, but they don't use them, they don't accompany them with good mental thought. So they're totally trapped inside the model. So we all know we need objectives. We know how to write objectives. It's a very formulaic model. They have 4 parts. We understand that. But in writing, as an example, in writing a 4-part objective and writing a design plan, if you are leading a team, if you are managing a team, what you really want to help them do is think beyond the objective. And I have found that the majority of people cannot do that. They can't think beyond the objective because they're so focused on getting the objective right, getting it technically accurate, making it somewhat poetic. And the objective itself, in my opinion, is really relatively irrelevant because the objective itself is trapped inside of the learning event. And if we're going to be better workplace learning professionals, we need to think far beyond the learning. And I think that the majority of the models tend to be very myopic, and they have us looking just at the training, just at the web-based training, just at the WBT, just at the storyboard, just on the workshop. And in a workshop or a seminar or a summit or a classroom or a course are simply moments in time when you look at them that way. And so I always try to talk with people that I'm managing or leading or working with, as a peer or a colleague, and encourage them to think beyond that. So why do we care about this behavior that we're writing in this objective, this ABCD objective? Why do we care about that behavior? And what is it going to do? What is it going to cause? What is it going to influence to be better or different once this course is over? And if you've taken my 603, you know that's my big thing. And I have found that it's very, very hard for people to think that way. They don't know how to think that way.
So you have 4-part objectives. You have Bloom's taxonomy, and I would like to ask you guys, when you think about Bloom's taxonomy, and we'll just focus on the cognitive domain, that is a really useful construct, right? Like that is a really useful way to think about the echelon of learning and the cognitive process and how to design to it. Now think about the learning designs you have been a part of and think about how many of them ever get beyond the base of the pyramid. And when I say Bloom's taxonomy, I'm assuming you know what I mean, but chat me up if you don't know what I mean, and we'll back up to it. Or confirm that you know what I mean.
Well, I know when I started with Anne Arundel County, they gave us a Bloom's wheel.
Oh, they gave you the wheel. Okay.
Yes.
So Allison knows, Sharia knows, Ada knows. Okay. So they give you the wheel, but actually usually it's a triangle, right? And you're moving up it. And most of the time, we're designing learning and we're asking people to demonstrate that they understand something or demonstrate that they know something. Oh, and Larry, they live by Bloom's at your school. And schools, again, might be slightly different than workplace learning. But what that doesn't help us do in terms of advancing performance at work, that doesn't ever tip us into a different moment of learning need. So is everyone here familiar with Godfredson's work on the 5 moments of learning need? No. Oh, hi, Walter. No. Hey, Greg, this is going to be our next course we're going to design together for the program.
The ideas just keep coming.
They just keep coming. So the 5 moments of learning need, if you don't know it, really recommend you get to know it because it's really, really useful and it's pretty basic, but it can completely change the way you think about how you design learning and the way that you help your clients understand learning at work. So Conrad Gottfredson and Bob Mosier have this thing called the 5 moments of learning need. And they talk about when typically a worker, someone would need to draw upon something that they have learned and use it at work. And this happens at 5 times. Let's hope I can remember them. A moment of learning need occurs when you are learning something for the first time. It occurs when you are trying to remember something that you once learned, when you are trying to apply something that you have once learned, when something has gone horribly wrong, and when things have changed. So there's these 5 times when a learner kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, collides with this need to learn. And typically, we only ever design learning for when someone is learning something the first time, even if the moment of learning need is something totally different. So we don't take our diagnosis, and I don't see a lot of people thinking analytically about the problem that we're trying to fix and think about it in different ways. We think there's a problem, we're going to fix it through training, and we're going to fix it through training always from the perspective that the moment of learning need is learning something for the first time. And that is almost never the appropriate or responsible solution at work, because people at work are trying to work. They're not trying to leave work and go to a classroom and learn something and come back. They're either trying to remember, they're trying to apply, they're trying to fix something that has broken, or they're trying to redirect when something has changed. And so these models and these theories and systems and formulas are very good, but my big soapbox is we need to get people out of the classroom, out of the moment where we're learning something for the first time, out of the behavior statement of the ABCD objectives, out of the design plan, and into the future state at work at the moment of application, at the collision, right, where learning is most needed, and design there. And to do that, we as managers, coaches, guides, instructors, peers, colleagues, consultants, clients, to get people there, we have to help them learn how to think. And it is an absent art in the workplace, really thinking about problems and solutions. And so that's where I think, as managers in the training environment, we can have the most influence. And if I had prepared a slide deck, it would have looked a little bit like that. Tracy says, wouldn't you incorporate situational scenarios in that training? Can you all see the chats as well? Or can only I can see them? You can all see them. Okay.
If they only send it to you.
Incorporate a situational scenario. Oh, if they only send it to me, I see. I don't think okay. So Tracy's asking, she's saying she's a little confused, and wouldn't you incorporate, sort of situational scenarios in a training so they can apply it later? Yes, you could do that in sort of a simulation. That would probably be used as some sort of evaluation mechanism, right, where they would have to fully participate with some degree of accuracy in a situation or a scenario or simulation to demonstrate that they've learned something in the classroom. But the moment of learning need might happen 3 years after that classroom. And it's still going to have occurred in an artificial environment. The classroom is artificial compared to the workplace. So it doesn't translate in terms of performance support. It's still trapped inside of a classroom. Whereas a more useful way to do that would be to build performance support tools that can be carried forward out of the classroom and into work, either paper-based, digital-based, video-based, that they can call upon. And that's typically where we see things fall short. We say, oh, they did a role play, oh, they did a simulation, they've learned this, but who is it, Offenhauser's forgetting curve? What you can reasonably retain from a classroom is insanely low in percentage to what you can actually apply at work. I don't know if that helps. Oh, Tracy's in pharmaceuticals and biotech. Sounds like my worst nightmare. What if you're trained on something and cannot apply it until a year later? Well, Layla, that's a great question. You never should have been trained on it. So that's an example of, oh, that's not what you were asking. Okay, what were you asking? What if you were trained on something and cannot apply it until a year later? Oh, I see. You weren't asking that, you were responding back. Got it, no problem. So in my perfect world of workplace learning, there would be no training, because training has such a limited ability to actually improve performance, because it addresses so few of the actual moments of learning need. It so rarely addresses intended future performance. It can't evaluate future performance because it's inside of a classroom. So although degree statements are great and Kirkpatrick is great, we very rarely get beyond level 1 or level 2. And level 3, when it's conducted, is typically some reach back or reflection of the learning environment rather than what's actually happening at work. So although those models, I think, are very useful gateways for understanding the learning function, for understanding basic things about how to design learning, I think they're insufficient for really tipping organizational performance. Patrick, that's a very long answer to your question.
That was far more thorough than I probably would have anticipated, but thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Sharia is asking me how I would assess someone that I'm interviewing. Okay, so when I'm interviewing someone, the most important question I ask, and one of the only answers I care about, is tell me what you've read lately. And that tells me a lot about somebody, and if that's someone that I think can bring value to my work team. Because I want a designer on my team who is broadly read in a variety of topics and specialties and subjects. I want someone who is reading Gawande and Seth Godin and the Heath brothers, and I want someone who can talk to me about Design Principles by Matthew May or Julie Dirkson's Designing for How People Learn. I want someone who knows the most current posting on Harvard Business Review's blog. I want someone who reads Sloan, because that's someone who knows how to think. And if they don't know how to think, that's someone who's trying to learn how to think. And the best design principles and the best business principles are borrowed from other fields. They're not born inside of instructional design. So someone who is ravenous about literature and publications, and I want to spend my whole interview talking with them about what they're reading and what they love about it and how they're going to take what they're reading and use it at work. Does that answer your question, Sharia? I'm gonna assume it did because I don't. Oh yes, yes, I heard you. Okay, Larry and Layla, I see your questions, but I'm just going to scroll back up because there were some other questions before that. Tracy, Layla, Sharia. So then Sharia asked, do I expect my team members to go with the design principles that I'm subscribing to? I expect my team members to do what's best for business. And I expect my team members to understand systematically the environment and the business model in which they're designing. And I expect them to be able to articulate with no uncertainty what they're trying to fix with learning and how their design solution is going to do that. And until they can do that, we're not going to design anything because we're not there to polish our own shoes and to design great training so we can admire our own work. We're there to improve organizational performance. And that's what I expect anyone on my team to subscribe to, because that's what we're paid to do. And I feel like it's my job to help them get there if they don't understand that yet. And that might mean different assignments. That might mean putting them on projects that will really stretch them or expose them to different parts of an organization. That might be recommended reading. That might mean pairing them up on different teams. But yes, I guess the short answer to that, Sharia, is yeah, I do, because that's what we are paid to do. How do you design if the audience?
Okay, thanks.
Oh, how do you design if the audience? Ada is asking how to design if the audience is at different collision points. Well, that would mean that you would have to really understand what you're designing to and understand who your audience is. And the moment of learning need. So if they're either trying to learn something for the first time, or if they're trying to recall something, you would know that because you would have done an audience analysis and you would understand sort of where the pain points were. that would come out in all of your front-end gap analysis, and your audience analysis, and your front-end analysis, and your root cause analysis, and all my other favorite analysis products. So that part of the consultative approach to being a designer is knowing who your audience is and what they need. And in the process of doing that, Ada, you would probably discover that they might have different collision points, which would require you to have different design solutions. I hope that's helpful. This is a lot like talking to myself. Then Larry asked, doesn't ask but states, would love to have your must-read list. I can give you a short list, and I can certainly follow up with Greg and share that with you. But I think everyone needs to read Better by Gawande, as well as Complications by the same author. Checklist Manifesto is good, but I don't know that it's as relevant to the work that we do. I think that Superbrain is a little bit wacky, but is a really good book for sort of understanding how learning can be a lever for better performance. And again, it's kind of wacky, but there's some really good stuff in there about how to help people mentally get unstuck, and how to know when they're unstuck, and how to develop different relationships with their brain, how to lead their brain, coach their brain, teach their own brain. And I found it really challenging, just kind of personally, and really something that was not something I would normally read, so I liked it for that. Tim Brown's Change by Design is a huge one. Matthew May's In Pursuit of Elegance changed my life. The Sports Gene was a really great book, not at all about learning, but about performance. Devil in the White City, which was a nonfiction book about the World's Fair in Chicago, was awesome and taught me so much about design based on the origin of the first Ferris wheel. I loved that book. I'm just going to turn around and look at my bookshelf real quick. If you haven't read Collapse by Jared Diamond, awesome book on organizations. Well, it's not really about organizations, but you can adopt a lot from it to organizational science. Oh, and then my very favorite book of all time, Guns of August. I would definitely recommend reading Guns of August if you want to understand systems and strategy and resistance to change and how to learn. That was a great book. So not typical design books, and that's what I like to see when I talk to people, that they can read across a range of sources and subjects and pull that back into their design and the work that they do. But I can type that up for you afterwards. If that's helpful, just let me know. Okay, Shreya. Oh, Layla is asking if I have an opinion on agile design and development. No, I don't. I know there's a lot of talk out there now about moving from ADDIE to SAM. My very limited understanding of agile design is that it's pulled more from a engineering or sort of information technology background, not background, but context. That's all great. But to me, that again is more of the process, not the thinking, right? That's sort of the process about how we go about pushing out products, and it's not about the thinking behind it. So I don't spend a lot of time there trying to learn those things. The whole leaving ADDIE for SAM, probably a good model, but to me, and I will run the risk of saying this in this environment, but that is an Allen Interaction product that they're trying to push out. I know they're doing some stuff at UNBC through the program, but to me, that's what I haven't spent a lot of time trying to understand that beyond ADDIE. Oh, here we go. Beverly's asking me that. What is my opinion of ADDIE versus successive approximation model. I don't really have an opinion. I think it doesn't matter what model you use if you don't know how to think. I think you're going to get the same quality of product whether you push it out through ADDIE or you push it out through SAM or some agile design model, because you're focused more on the model than you are on the creative tension around the design. So I don't really have an opinion on that, to be honest. Because to me, that's just, so to me it's sort of like, how are you going to build your house? And you've got that really cool graphing paper, right? And you've got, if you're an architect, you have all these different tools. You maybe have a slide ruler, and you have all kinds of cool rulers and mechanical pencils, and you have all of these things, and that's going to build the house. But that's not going to decorate the house. So it's not going to make the house livable. It's not going to make the house comfortable. So you can use whatever model or framework you want. It's what you put in it, right, that makes it unique and livable and comfortable. And to me, that's sort of the equivalent to design. The thinking behind design matters to me a lot more than what model you use to do it. If it's iCare, if it's Dick and Carey, if it's, you know, Kemp and Ross, it's kind of irrelevant to me. You're welcome, Ada. Oh, hi, Shreya. Thanks for telling me I'm not talking to myself. That's good to know. Beverly, the author of Better, is a tool. It's H-E-U-L. Oh, I'll type it in here. Look at this. Look at me using my technology. Atul Gawande. Allison, I'm really looking forward to your long question. I will cue you shortly. Thanks, Patrick, for answering that. Ada, that would be great. Very helpful. Barbara Tuckman is the author of Stems of August. Oh, Outliers, Larry. Yes, another good one. Okay, so Allison, go ahead and ask your really long question.
Okay, so I know you've done some work with the government, and I'm working with some government clients currently through my company, and I'm just now starting some work on doing some like capture work, and it's very fascinating to me. And so I'm getting to my question. So I'm wondering if you've done some capture work with the government before where they've proposed training and you were going after training as the proposed work, but in reality they needed something different, performance support or something else, and how that might have played out.
When you say capture work, are you talking pre-contract?
Yeah.
Like, are you talking source selection, or are you talking proposal writing, or?
Proposal writing. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have done quite a bit of proposal writing, and I would say that in my experience, you don't have the opportunity to fully understand the need if you're just responding to an RFP, right? Like you're kind of writing back to what they've indicated. So I did write a 10-year, multi-million-dollar proposal for the National Guard, and they were asking for training. And in the response, I mean, you clearly have to show how you're going to meet the statement of work. So we added in on the fringe, of course, within the page count, the other things that we would do to enhance the requirements, right, in that statement of work. But in my experience, there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to know or understand the learning need unless you are the incumbent.
Yeah, I guess my question is more about, have you kind of won something where the contract was for training and gotten there and realized that training was just completely the wrong solution? And
oh, after winning it?
After winning it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then you just mod the contract. Yeah, and you know that, yes, and that happens all the time, you know, inside the government and outside the government, and contract and non-contract. I mean, people always, they think training is this great panacea and it's going to cure everything, and it doesn't cure anything usually, really. So just take the language that they've given you and speak it back to them, or if they talk about learning needs, or they talk about training solutions, or they talk about needs assessment, and then just try to re-engineer, like give it back to them. But how can I say this? You have to give them their words back. You have to use their words, but you have to change the solution, right? And if that requires a modification of the statement of work, or if that requires an additional CLIN or something on the contract, that can all be done as long as you meet the original need, right? Mm-hmm. It's just words, and it's consulting. I mean, do you have a co-char or a CO on that can help you? Are you the co-char?
No, I'm actually on a separate project, not having to do with the stuff that I'm working with on proposal writing. That where just training is not the answer, and I have no power. I'm unable to talk directly to the client, and the folks internally are not really willing to kind of make any changes or propose to the client something differently. So it's been an uphill battle for me, and I don't expect that to change because I've been fighting it for several months now and nothing has budged. But I'm just curious if you've come across that and kind of how you've handled it,
Well, is training not the answer, but learning is?
I think performance support tools are the answer.
So yeah, so I would just back off of that a little bit and couch it as learning. Just call it just in time, right? Just in time learning, or just in time, just in time. You can even call it just in time training, which is not really accurate. But if you have a reluctant or unwilling CO or layer of management in between you and the client, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to get a bloody head by banging it against the wall.
Right.
So I don't think that that's worth pursuing. Or, take it on as a challenge and really think about how you can explain it to them differently, right? How you can help them see that you're still satisfying the statement of work, that you're still providing the intent, which is training, which is a learning solution. The learning solution is more sustainable, more powerful, and more likely to get them the intended outcome if you embed it in the work environment. And how do you do that? You do that with performance support tools. And, take it on as a challenge to try to help them through the thinking. Yeah. It can be done.
It's heartening. It's heartening to know that it can be done. That's I'm just wondering, is it even possible? Does it ever happen? So.
It does happen. Absolutely, it happens. But when it doesn't happen, it's because someone hasn't been able to explain it, right, in a way. Like, you've only communicated if the message you send is the message that's been received. And so much just breaks down in the middle of that Venn diagram, right? Like, so much doesn't happen. We don't pick the right words, or we don't explain it the right way, or we don't focus on the solution. And it's a good challenge. Oh, just excuse me for 1 second. My son just got home. Is Mark, hold on. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm back. My son just got home. I had to get him a ride home from soccer. Okay, you're welcome, Allison. All right, Larry is asking, how did you land your first ISD job with the government, and what can you tell me about this experience? Okay, well, I think I landed my first ISD job with the government. So I worked for a government contracting firm. I applied for a job through ASTD, actually, the job center, and I got it. And they were a small contractor to the DOD, and actually where I met my husband, which is probably the most remarkable thing about that job. So that's how I landed it. I started doing the work, and then from there I started writing proposals, to Allison's point, and I liked that a lot better. And what can I tell you about the experience? We did a ton of work. We built an accreditation, which was really fun and fascinating because I like it when things make sense. And we got all of our curriculum accredited, and we expanded the program, and we built in performance support, and we built in communities of practice, and we built in online learning into what was almost entirely a classroom-based contract. And that took a lot of relationship building, but we did it. And from there is how I learned about proposal writing and winning work, how to win work with the government. And I left there, and my husband's a service-disabled combat veteran, and so we opened our own small consulting firm, which we still have. I don't do a lot of work through it anymore. But I did that for a while, and I got work with DoD partners and some non-DoD partners, and then I started doing a lot of higher ed-based work with the community college system, and then I went to work for the government myself because they recruited me. So I can't say that the work was all that interesting. I mean, I wouldn't go to the government if you want to innovate, to be honest. I don't know if that helps, Larry. Yeah, the government is not, there are pockets, but overall I wouldn't say that they are innovators.
I'm trying to stay within the government because I've been in too long. So I'm trying to get into an interagency transfer and continue to be productive and working in an ISD kind of situation instead of just the classroom that I'm in now. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
You know, I think you can build good roots in ISD in a classroom because I've never been, aside from the higher ed level, you know, I've never been a teacher in a classroom, but I would think that a teacher in a classroom has some ability to be creative about how they introduce subjects and teach their curriculum. I live in Loudoun County, Virginia, and I am like totally amazed, just completely amazed at what my kids are getting at school in terms of curriculum, and everything from, you know, my 8th grader had to tweet. He had to tweet the key messages of the Civil War, right? And I'm thinking, well, from a learning perspective, you know, what's that really doing? Well, maybe nothing, but man, is it engaging him at a totally different level than sitting down and, you know, role playing, you know. And my younger son finished a unit on Egypt, and they finished the unit by VTCing into a museum in Cairo, right, and using the smartboard. So I think that amazing, ISD has an opportunity within a very confined sort of four-wall environment to really take off if the teacher is motivated. I think that's a great place to try it out. And if you're trying to leave the classroom, I can talk to you about that in a second. Okay, Tracy's saying, although we all work in different areas and have different professions, so Tracy, you're asking for advice on how to create an internship within your own company. I would say don't do that, to be completely frank. I would not do that. I would try to do an internship somewhere else and really get a different experience and see how a different world works and a different company works or a different industry works. But all of you that have been through my class, you know, do, you know, client and a project, and the majority of the time the majority of the time, students do that by finding work within their own company. And many times that creates a tension because they're trying to satisfy the work, the company, the work, while they're trying to satisfy the demands of the course, and they aren't the same. And it kind of puts the student in a difficult situation where they're trying to satisfy two masters, but that Venn diagram doesn't ever really come together. And I know that for Keith Curran's class, I learned recently that he does sort of, real-time, real-world type of experience, and I think another instructor does. I know with Chuck, you're working on developing training, and the majority of the time that takes place within that same petri dish because it's easy, it's accessible, it's, where you work, you can modify it to satisfy, the project-based work. But I don't think it affords you the expansion that you really want to have, both mentally and culturally and attitudinally. So probably not the answer you were looking for, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend doing something totally different.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your response, and I understand where you're coming from, but what if you don't have that option? What if you work for a company that says, you have to create this within our own environment in order for you to continue doing this and show how perhaps what you're learning is going to benefit us as a whole? Because if you still want to continue working for that company or even within that same industry, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because it all has to be incorporated.
Are they paying your tuition? Are they paying your tuition?
Some situations they are, some situations they aren't. For example, within my company, oh yeah, because they want to, even when you're doing something extra, they still will come back and say, how is this benefiting you? And how is this benefiting us? Mm-hmm.
Right. So the reason that they want to know that is because they're paying for you to get the degree.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't work there.
And it doesn't have to. I mean, you can do it on your own, but also I think within, it doesn't matter because so many other people are in different industries within my industry. And when you want to move on or when you're doing developmental plans and where you want to go for next steps, you have to show how it's going to benefit them because they're looking at the big picture. So with keeping that in mind.
So to ask you back, are you suggesting that the only way to show them that it benefits them is by producing product for them?
Yeah, that would be a way to do it, especially if as I said, it's not about me, but I don't know if other people are in the same type of situation. When you have a full-time job, I travel a lot or whatever, and I would have to incorporate it into that. I would not have additional time to do a separate internship. So therefore, I'd have to kind of kill two birds with one stone. If I wanted to do something and then use hone my skills, it would have to be within my own company.
Yeah. I understand those conditions. I don't think it changes my answer. I still don't think that's the ideal opportunity. I think that's the ideal opportunity. But if you're Sheree, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I wanted to give an example of when I was in your class. Normally when you go out and get a client, we only met face-to-face with our client once. The other times it was over the phone, and it turned out to be a very successful product. We did performance analysis for an adult learning center, and it didn't take much of our time going to them. It was just a matter of, we set up times to talk over the phone.
Right. Right. So,
and I just wanted to give that as an option.
So Tracy, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that everyone has conditions and demands on their time. And if you feel like that is requiring you to work within your own company, I would say if you don't already work in it, there's a learning unit somewhere, a learning branch a training branch, a creative learning solutions branch or something like that, and you could try to go in and volunteer services to one of their projects. Or if you're already in that environment, you could go to broader HR, who does a lot of, so Tracy, you could go to commercial training and development. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, so that's what I would do, and just go over and say, I'm a master's degree or graduate certificate degree student, I'm studying these things, it really interests me. Is there a project I can join you on? Is there a project I can shadow? And those typically exist in all companies. HR is another opportunity. And then another place to look, depending on the size of your company, I don't know where you work, but lots of times you can find something like the Center for Leadership Development or the Center for Organizational Development, something like that. It could be a really small team. It could be hidden way down deep inside of HR. They need help, Tracy. Those places need help, and you're the one to do it. So find something like that and link yourself up to it. The talent management groups are real popular now. You hear that a lot. TMG, that's a real popular one. Again, depending on the size of your organization, if there's any kind of succession planning involved, if there's any kind of high-performing, high-potential, talent groups, get in there, because those people all need consultative help, they all need systematic solutions, and they all need learning. And I would go there. And if the company's international, you're going to be able to find something like that. International leader development, executive MBA program. I'm sure there's something. And just go over there and introduce yourself and tell them what you're doing. And that is something I wanted to talk about, but I'll come back to it. Interviewing. So let me come back to that because Patrick has asked this question. How have you figured out how to develop a rapport with students in a virtual environment when there is a complete absence of physical contact? Well, I don't think I have a silver bullet for that, Patrick, and I know you've asked me that offline also. But I think this is going to sound terrible. I don't mean for this to sound as terrible as I think it's going to sound, but I actually don't really work that hard at it. Like, I don't really work that intentionally at building relationships. I think that if those relationships are to be built, and I think they are built, I don't know to what degree, it's because students in the classroom are attracted to the passion you bring to the topic, right? They don't know you. They've never even seen you, like you said. You've never even seen each other. But something about the passion for a topic is really attractive to a student. And if you can figure out how to get that across, the students really feel it. They feel it in a way that is hard to imagine when you're just writing on discussion boards. Something that I have tried to do, and I would recommend to anyone who's trying to develop relationships online, and Tracy too, if you're working internationally, certainly there's going to be people that you're not going to meet, but you have to develop. You have to meet them in multiple different mediums, and I'm not talking about learning styles because you all know how I feel about that. But you have to try to engage them in different ways. And so you've been in my class, I have the YouTube, and I also have links to blogs, and I also type on discussion boards, and sometimes I use a podcast, and I used to have music. And, you have to make it a dynamic place where they want to come, right? And so many times people say things to me, not really necessarily about learning or being a virtual instructor, really about anything. And they say, people don't want to do that, or people won't do that, or that's never been successful before, whatever the naysayers are saying. And my response to them is always the same, and it's this. It's because you've not created a compelling alternative. You've never created a compelling alternative. So if everybody hates your training, if nobody wants to come to your compliance courses, if nobody is signing up for your classrooms, if no one is reading your blog, it's because it's not compelling. So what are you doing in design, through design, with design, as a designer to make it compelling? And if you're not asking yourself that every day, you're not doing your job. So I think that's really important. And the other thing that I think is important, Patrick, still trying to answer your question, is that if you think back to the classes, if you've had them with me, I'm not around very much. I don't try to dominate the discussion board. I don't respond to every post. I don't force myself into the conversations. If you take my 689 class, you might go weeks without, you'll hear from me, but I don't recommend, as an instructor, trying to control everything, because that just suppresses and depresses people's willingness to participate. And nobody wants that. Like, we've already all grown up in that. We've already graduated from K-12. We've already graduated out of adolescence and our youth, and we're adults, and we're choosing to be in a classroom, and we're choosing to participate, and we're choosing to support each other. And I talk about that a lot in my classes. I talk about the community of learning, and some of you may have gotten, an email from me, a private email, and I'll say, I really appreciate the citizen you are in this community of learning. And I mean that. And to me, that's like the highest compliment you can give someone, is that you are a real citizen here. Like, you contribute, and you take it seriously, and that's because a student brings that, because I've made the space available, right? You have to make the space available, and to do that, I got to get out of the way. So I think a lot about, here's an example, objectives, right? And when I think about a course, I think about the audience and the behavior and the conditions and the degree. And I think the most important thing you can do as an instructor is set the conditions, set the right conditions for those behaviors to emerge. And that means different things to different instructors, but to me, setting the conditions means making space for other people to participate. And in my experience, I think the majority of the time, I won't say all of the time, and that's certainly not for every learner, but the majority of the time that works out really well.
Thank you. I wanted to kind of hear you describe just like you did, to kind of describe the process of everything. But what you said about it, I guess to paraphrase, you're essentially saying kind of addition by subtraction. Don't make yourself the dominant force, and I remember seeing this in 689 is you do let the community of learners kind of guide themselves and just provide some focal points along the way, possibly.
Yeah, set the conditions. So on that note, I'll say, if you haven't yet, you might want to read Tribes by Seth Godin, and the subtitle of that is Why We Need You to Lead Us. And it's a great different way to think about leading as an instructor to anyone out there who's a trainer or a teacher or an instructor. Tribes is a great book. It's an easy read. It's like one chapter. And I also have, this is a little shameless plug, I have an info line coming out that I wrote. I've never done that before. ASTD asked me about writing a book, and I was like, I don't know about writing a book. I was like, how about I start with an info line, because they're only 16 pages. I didn't know if I could really write a book. Turns out I have no interest in writing a book, because writing 16 pages almost killed me. But it is my model for building learner-centered instruction. And it's coming out in August, so you can all read it. And I use 603 in it actually as a case study. But I talk about learner-centered instruction and the 4 relationships in every classroom. So I'm going to tell you this as a pre-read, but don't take off with my idea because I'll find you. So I talk about 4 relationships in every classroom, 4 relationships in every learner-centered classroom. So first of all, the learner has to have a relationship with the instructor. And that's not to say that's the dominant relationship, but it's just one relationship you have to tend to in that learning environment. So you have the learner to the instructor, and then you also have the learner and setting the conditions for the learner to have a relationship with the content. And that looks really different ways, and that may or may not be the dominant relationship. And it might look differently online than it looks in person, but again, setting the conditions around learner to instructor, learner to content, and then setting the conditions around the relationship between the learner and his or her peers, you know, the learner-to-learner relationship, which in my 689 is really dominant. You know, how do you create sustainable communities of practice? How do you feed them in a classroom? How do you really encourage the learners to rely on each other and support each other and actually learn from one another rather than just critique each other's work? And if you've taken my class, I use the peer review, and it's not about critiquing each other's work but making it better. And then the last relationship that everybody forgets about is, in my opinion, the most important relationship is the learner's relationship with himself. And how do you give space for that to develop? How do you help a learner really understand how they're learning, what they plan on doing with it, how they derive value from it? How do you build that relationship so that when those collisions with different moments of learning need happen in the future, the learner doesn't suffer from memory loss, that learning is available to him or her? So that's something that I think if you thought about it, you would find those 4 relationships are alive and well in all of the classes I teach. And that's a way to think about learning and what you're doing in the classroom and how you design. Okay, Patrick, I'm done answering the question. Layla is asking for book recommendations around leadership development. Okay. And Patrick said made to stick. You're welcome, Patrick. Layla, leadership development. I'm going to have to think about that.
That he knows how this is going out and that she's recommending no changes to it, just send as is. And I wouldn't feel comfortable doing this like it's doing for me.
I don't know if Beverly's talking to me or not. She's not talking to me. Okay. Layla, I'm just drawing a blank, but I promise I will think of some and I will get back to you. And I'm feeling like there's,
Yeah, that's
oh, yes, Layla, predatory thinking. That's, I'll type it in here.
Thanks for helping me, but it's not a good answer.
Got to read predatory thinking. That's a really important one. What is the other book that I'm thinking of that I can't even remember what it's called?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She's saying don't fix it?
Don't fix it, Beverly. But Layla, my husband loves leadership development, so I'll ask him for some too. And the guy who wrote that, his last name is Trott. I don't know what his first name is. I can't think of it. Other questions? Oh, you already found it on Amazon? That's a good one. That's a really good one. How do you acclimate a new instruction designer coming into your team? You mean culturally or skills-wise? Skills. Well, I like to keep new people with me for a while and just kind of see how they work. You know, how do they work? How do they approach a project or a client or a problem? I also like to see how they work with other people because So when interviewing people, I like to ask myself 3 questions, right, when I try to decide is that someone that I'm going to offer a job to or a position to. So I like to know, are they able, like are they capable, like can they do the job? Of course we all would want to know that, right? So can they do this job? Are they able? And then I like to assess them on will, like are they able, are they willing? Not only are they willing to do this job, are they going to love doing this job? Like, are they going to love this job? And then I like to assess them on fitness. Am I going to love doing this job with this person? Right, so do they have the skills? Do they have the attitude and the will? And do they have the kind of personality that is going to work well with me and my team? And sometimes they might not have the skill, but they might have the personality that I want, and I would rather have someone with the right personality than the right skills any single day. And if you have been in the program, you know that ISG and design work is very collaborative. You don't ever work in a vacuum. You're always working on someone else's product, so there's a huge consultative piece. There's a huge relationship building piece. And if you bring the wrong person onto your team, the wrong attitude onto your team, it's so destructive. And no amount of skill building or strength and skill can overcome that. So Sharia is saying, okay, so how do you know that based on what you've read lately? Well, I think you can tell. Well, first of all, I'm not going to interview anybody who doesn't show that they have basic skills through some sort of resume reviews, right? So a resume review in terms of experience and education and some sort of portfolio and writing sample that I would ask for before I would ever meet anybody is going to give me enough indication about their skill. And then when you're talking to someone, I mean, that's not the only question I ask, what they read, but if you can find out from someone what they're reading and what they love about what they're reading and how they're going to apply what they're reading to how they work, is going to reveal a lot about their passion, because they're talking with you conversationally about something they really are not anticipating that you're going to ask them. Like, I'm never going to go to an interview and ask someone, tell me about a time when you had a problem at work. Like, wah, wah, I could really, I would never ask that. So if you engage them in an interview just in a conversational way, you're going to learn a lot more about their personality, because they're not going to be behaving like they're in an interview. They're going to be behaving like they're in a conversation with you. So I think that might also just be my basic approach to interviews. It's not very structured, in the sense that I don't have a tablet and paper out, and I don't go through a list of questions and write their answers down. And would I require a portfolio? I would require some sort of work sample, yes, absolutely. What I'm most interested in is if someone can write. And I'm telling you right now, people do not know how to write. They do not know how to write, and it's terrible. So that's the biggest thing. Can they write? And they can't. It's terrible. So my whole day is like editing other people's work who don't know how to write. Bad. It's like an epidemic. What else? Sharia is asking, would I suggest a technical writing course? Well, I think if you're doing technical training, that wouldn't be a bad idea. But not all writing is technical. I think there's persuasive writing and journalistic writing and expository writing and certainly technical writing. And to me, that is just another form of design, right? And it comes down to understanding the problem. It comes down to understanding the audience. It comes down to understanding the solution, or rather, designing a solution that's most likely to achieve the intended outcome. So, for example, when I have to write some sort of release about policy, that's just a pretty technical piece of writing. I don't have to get really poetic about that. So when we're writing because we want people to create, increase their contributions to the combined federal campaign in November after they've been furloughed for 3 weeks, well, that's not a very technical piece of writing. That's a very different type of writing. So I think having skill in a lot of different types of writing is helpful, because whether you're a writer or a communicator or a trainer or a designer, you're going to be designing solutions in all different instructional domains, right? You have your cognitive domain, your psychomotor domain, your interpersonal domain, and your affective domain. You need to have writing styles that accommodate all 4. Yes, Layla, I would agree with that. It does make you more concise. As Patrick said, design by subtraction. You're done when there's nothing left to take out. And if you read Matthew May's book on the pursuit of elegance, subtraction is one of his 4 principles of design. Oh, okay. So Ada is asking, what are the must-haves in our portfolios? Okay. It might not surprise you to know that I have a very different opinion on this. So you need a portfolio that is going to demonstrate that you have some technical skill, that you can do something, right? You can create a web page or write a design plan or formulate 4-part objectives. Like, you need to be able to demonstrate you have skill. And I think that the strength of this UMBC program is that you are all going to have that in spades, because you're coming on a 602 and you have training documents, you're coming out of 603 and you have analysis and evaluation-based documents. If you take any of the e-learning, you're just building, like, because it's an applied master's, you are just creating so much product the whole time. So you're not going to have trouble putting a portfolio together. Let me tell you where people have trouble. And I'm not saying you have trouble with this, but I am suggesting, strongly encouraging, that you end this call and you think about this, how you would answer this. What I have found, and I'm sounding extremely preachy tonight, and I am sorry for that, but this is a true statement. What I have found is that applicants in general have no idea how to articulate their value. They have no idea how to tell me what they're good at and why they're better at it than anybody else. They have no idea how to persuade me or convince me or even encourage me to consider why they are the person I can't afford not to hire. And there is really something to be said for completely confidently and genuinely being able to tell someone what your value proposition is. And Allison, you have to get better at it. You cannot be terrible at that, because I want you to come into an interview with me and make sure I never forget you, right? I want to know that you are the person I want to hire. Because you're passionate and you're capable and you have great ideas and you are smart enough to be able to tell me exactly why. And it's an art, right? It's harder than it sounds, but it's so important, and people do not know how to do this. And I'll give you an example, but my daughter's boyfriend, who is 26, so this is a younger guy, but he's not, he's not that young, is asking me, how to find a job on usajobs.gov. Like, how do I get a job in the government? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? USA Jobs is gigantic. The government is gigantic. And he couldn't tell me what he wants to do. And I said, okay, if you don't know what you want to do, tell me what you're good at. And he couldn't do that either. And, he could tell me what his degree was in, and he could tell me kind of the work that he does now. But he had no way of communicating to me, like, either what he was good at or what he wanted to do. And I'm seeing on the chat that Shreya and Allison are saying, we're taught not to toot our own horn. And I'm just going to tell you that's not what this is about. This is not about tooting your own horn. This is about showing someone else how you are going to help them. How you are going to help them and how you are a solution to some of their problems. It's not about saying that you're great. It's not about hubris or arrogance. It's about bringing value. You are part of the solution to their problem. And that is a consultative approach to understanding what they need and how you fit into it. So tooting your own horn is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It is about solving problems and bringing value. And in the process of doing that, what you're showing someone is that you understand what they need. You understand. You didn't just apply to a vacancy. You didn't just throw your resume around, but you really understand the value, your value. And then you can move into a conversation around how you have developed those skills. I have developed those skills because I have earned this graduate certificate, or I'm a student in this graduate program, or I have, Larry, 20 years in a classroom, and I have led over 1,876 students to successfully graduate out of the 5th grade. And I am eager to bring those skills into a workplace learning environment. And here's how I think I can do that. So once you start talking about value, you're no longer an applicant, you're a solution. And it's kind of poetry, but you got to be memorable. Oh, Patrick, Sharia, you're welcome. Have you found any lessons in running that you can apply to training development and SCI? Yeah, I love running. Well, yes, you are never going to finish if you don't start. And if you've taken my classes, you know that I can sort of get trapped in some analysis paralysis, and I could spend all day tightening up a problem statement or all day reevaluating a future state, and I would much rather stay there than in development. But if you don't ever really start, you're never going to finish, right? And the road is sometimes very, very long. I mean, it's just unbelievable sometimes how long it takes to get a training product or a learning product out the door. The other thing from running that I have learned is that to get better, you have to do it differently, okay? So, I can run a marathon, and, first marathon you do, and you just kind of like run twice a week, and you do these long runs on Friday, on the weekend. But you're never going to get better doing that. So now you have to run some hills, and hills stink. Nobody wants to run hills, but hills are going to make you faster. Okay, and then, but that's still not enough. I mean, or that might be enough to shave off a couple seconds, but you're still not better. So now what are you going to do? Oh, now I'm going to run speed intervals. And I'm going to run speed intervals once a week, and I'm going to run hills once a week, and I'm going to run distance once a week. I'm still running, right, but I'm running differently. Every time I go out, I'm adding a new skill. I'm adding a new technique. And now I'm going to weight train, and I'm also going to do some yoga or whatever it is. But the idea is that to get better at design or training development, you have to constantly change. You have to pull in new techniques and new skills and refine your craft. Like, it's your craft, it's your trade craft, and make that footprint as big as you can make it. Oh, Beverly, how do you push through paralysis analysis? So I just think that problems are fascinating, and I have my bachelor's is in anthropology, so I've always been kind of partial to systems and organizations and people and culture, and I think that's just where I'm more comfortable. But that's certainly not going to pay the bills, and no client is paying me to sit around and admire the problem. So admire the solution instead, and just, you got to shift your thinking. I guess that's not a great answer, but I guess what you have to do. Hi, Denise. I don't think we've met. How do you inspire your employees or designers? Well, I don't know. I think the harder question is, how do you inspire yourself, right? And I think, ooh, there goes my screen. I think if you're inspired by your work and you're doing work that you love and you're proud of the work that you're doing. Like I said before, other people are really attracted to that, right? It's sort of seductive. Like, what's her secret? She's doing what she loves, you know? And I think that's the challenge, is inspiring yourself. And then that's just who you are. And other people are attracted to that. I mean, there's lots of management theory out there, you know, purpose, mastery, autonomy, or, you know, how often you're supposed to give praise. I think a great way to inspire someone is to give them really good feedback, really good critical feedback. And here's something I say, and I may have said it in classes you've taken with me, but I say all the time, this is coming from a critical mind, not a critical spirit. I'm not here to tear you down and to make you feel bad. I'm here to, this feedback is purposeful in that it's supposed to make you better, right? That's the best thing you can do for someone else. And my husband is military, and I said that already, and mentoring is huge, and the officer corps, and we talk a lot about that, and we say, you know, mentoring isn't about picking someone or sponsoring someone. Mentoring is a defense of the profession, right? Mentoring is about defending the integrity of the profession and making it better. And if you care about it, that's what you do for people. You help them see where they're doing great, and you help them see where they can get better, and you give them the critical mind that maybe they can't put on their own work. And that's, I guess, how I would answer that question. Well, thank you, Beverly. Oh, Denise, so someone said they're often pigeonholed. Well, I think that's true to a certain extent. I'm going to offer to you yet another probably totally ungracious comment that I don't think there's very many good designers out there, right? So chances are you're going to go to work for someone on a design team, and your manager is not going to be a very good designer. They probably aren't going to be a very good manager either. So yeah, you're sort of pigeonholed because you are surrounded by mediocre talent. And that's just the reality, I think. I think that's why this program has so many students in it, and you know, the courses are always full. It's because people want to get better at this work, and there's a need for people to do this work better. So I find that encouraging. If people feel pigeonholed as instructional designers in their organizations, I'm also going to offer that it's because they don't know how to articulate their value. So if all you do all day is create storyboards on PowerPoint and pass them off as mediocre flash files, you know, these mediocre flash files, or some web-based training that's lost inside of an LMS, no one gets that. Nobody gets that. So it's up to you to help them understand how you can bring value. You're well trained out of this course to understand systems, organization, performance, outcomes, gaps. You're well trained. You have all of it. So if you feel pigeonholed, or someone else says she felt pigeonholed, well, write a value proposition and start living it. Because you don't have to be. Other questions?
Jeanette, this is Greg. I have a question.
Okay.
I see people in their careers, and I think especially when they make that first jump, they graduate, they go out and they get a job, and they work maybe at an entry-level position or a comparable one, and then they realize sometimes, not all of them, that some of the things they need to do to get ahead are not the instructional design and training, but it's things they don't necessarily learn in graduate school. And some of them get frustrated with that, and I think they think, well, gee, why just, you know, why can't I be an instructional designer forever? And I guess in certain organizations they can, but what I try to tell people is you have to be open to change, and if your organization needs to do something different to help people improve their performance or whatever it might be, you have to kind of seize that opportunity. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that. And it's not a question as such. It's not, I'm not looking for a solution from you. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on that general topic.
Okay. Well, I think that all behavior is learning, really, I do. And that's the great thing about being an instructional designer, someone who works in workplace learning, is that really everything we do, the foundation is found in learning. And it's a very versatile skill set if you polish it. It's very versatile. So yes, being open to change or going and doing something that maybe isn't look pristinely like ISD, I really recommend, because I think most people will amaze themselves with what this skill set prepares them to do. It prepares you to understand behavior. It prepares you to understand the needs of the organization. It prepares you how to communicate in a way that most people don't know how to communicate, because if you're designing training or learning or whatever you want to call it, you are trying to change the way people do something. Change what they know, change what they think, change how they act. And that's a really needed skill, like in almost any job. The ability to reach people, to modify behavior, and it's not natural to a lot of people. So you understand systems, you understand behavior, you understand people, you understand communication, you understand outcomes, you know how to write, because you're an instructional systems designer, and that's what you were trained to do. So there's really almost nothing in an organization that you couldn't take a portion of your ISD skills and adopt in that role. So I would say don't shy away from that, because you're really valuable in a way that an IT person is not going to be valuable, in a way that an accountant isn't going to be valuable. And I would just say from my own experience that I got assigned into a new job and was like, really? You want me to go be the director of communications? I don't even know what that is. And I'm so glad I did, because I do know what that is. I know what that is more than almost anyone else doing the job. And people, like, they start saying, oh, well, based on your expertise as a communicator, and I'm like, well, I'm not really a communicator. I'm an instructional designer. But I do know how to communicate in a way that's uncommon because of the training I got through the skills in ISD. So unless you want to be in ISD forever, which most people, I don't know, maybe you do, you're going to have to do something different. And doing something different is a way of showing your value to your organization. And I know we don't all work in federal service or in the military, but there is a there is a generosity of spirit in having talent, and your talent is always in service to the mission. Your talent is always in service of the needs of the business. So be in service, and let your talent be in service. And that's a really different way to think about work. And if you do that, I really think you're going to be happier, and you're going to find ways forward that you didn't know were there. And writing storyboards and PowerPoint all day is really boring. And there's a lot of other stuff out there. So be of service and see where it goes.
Thank you, Jeanette.
You're welcome. Other questions? I wasn't expecting to go for a full 90 minutes, so I'm glad I didn't prepare something, or we'd be here till like midnight.
Jeanette.
Patrick.
Um, this may seem like a sideways question, but I was just interested to see if you might have a funny anecdote or story about instructional design, because we do so much application and logical thinking in regards to this field. I'm just wondering if something has ever just kind of come up that has struck you of just being funny about this whole gig.
Oh, I think it's hilarious on a daily basis, actually. But I'm going to have to think of a real example that I can share with you. I can't think of anything.
Sorry to put you on
Really,
the spot, but
no, it's okay. I mean, I generally think I laugh a lot. I think most things are really, really funny, and I find a lot of humor in just daily living. But I'll have to think of one. I'll have to think of one for you. I will share one story, and then unless there's more questions, and then we can be done. But Allison, to answer your question, I offered that class in the summer. And I'm actually, this semester, I'm wondering, that informal learning class that I teach, I'm actually wondering if it's sort of OBE now, like if it's still going to be relevant in summer of 2015. So I'll have to talk with Greg about that, if that's something we're going to keep offering. Because it was really novel when we started running it in 2010. And I just wonder, I'm just wondering about that. So I mentioned, this will be sort of my last story about design. So I mentioned the book Devil in the White City. I don't know if any of you have read that. But they talk about the World's Fair, and I don't know if there's a World's Fair anymore, but the prior World's Fair to the one in Chicago was held in Paris, okay? And the big unveiling in the World's Fair in Paris was the Eiffel Tower. And when Chicago won the bid to host the World's Fair, they engaged all of these designers from all over the country. And the idea was, how are we going to out-Eiffel the Eiffel Tower? Like, how are we going to out-design that? And I wish I had my book with me, so I just underlined this amazing quote. But anyway, and it was a huge design challenge, and they were so inspired by it. And out of that challenge came the Ferris wheel. And I find that fascinating because the Eiffel Tower is not round, right? The Eiffel Tower is this giant steel sculpture. And in an effort to outdo it, they came up with a giant steel structure, but it was a wheel, right? So it's totally different, but it's totally the same. And it was all the same design principles involved in getting to the Eiffel Tower as how they got to the Ferris wheel. And it was the same kind of creative thinking and the same challenge, but the outcome was so different, and the outcome was so right. Like, it was exactly right for the World's Fair in Chicago. And, you know, they built this Ferris wheel and nobody thought they can do it, and they went through all of the calculations and the design around how they were going to get it to stand up straight and not fall down, and how, you know, all this stuff. It's fascinating. But the most fascinating thing about it is that eventually that same Ferris wheel, it traveled all over the world after that, and they put it back up at all these different local fairs, and eventually that same Ferris wheel was sold for scrap metal in Louisiana. So even the very best design and even the very best idea is hackneyed at some point. It's over. And it has lost its value, and it has lost its utility. And to me, that just makes me love design because the next design challenge is always there, right? It's always ready to be had, and it's always ready to be discovered, and it's always ready for your best thinking. And even when you build the most amazing thing, it's only amazing for a little while. And that shelf life is a great challenge because you can't ever afford to lose your skill. You can't ever afford to not be getting better. And that's what I love. That's the last story I think I'll tell you because that's why I love design.
Jeanette, this is Greg. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I think I think whatever you would have done would have been very good, but I'm glad that you listened to the audience and the questions prior to tonight and offered your suggestion and just had the intuition to go with it.
Yeah, and I'll try to put together a reading list and send that to you in the next couple weeks.
I think that would be very interesting because I don't know, when I've read a number of things about Steve Jobs that talks about a similar theme about, like, he said when he was first starting to do significant things at Apple, how he said all his previous reading and training and all these ideas came back to him, and all of a sudden they were really relevant. He said when he took a calligraphy course just for the hell of it in college,
right,
that when he started designing the which were very new, the fonts at Apple way back when, he said that it just seemed, he's like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I was inspired by this. So I like thinking like that, like you're talking about how those books make you think, and if you're a good thinker, that goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I make my kids read a lot.
Well, that's good. We like that. Well, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone. I'm sure that you were very well received. I think from the level and depth of questions and the interest, you can tell that you definitely piqued their interest. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I was so glad to be asked anytime.
Okay.
And it was nice to see many of you online again who I've known before, and I hope we meet again, maybe sometime in person.
All right. Thank you,
Have
Jeanette.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Got it. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any questions for me about the course deliverables, schedule, anything?
Hey, Greg, it's Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Hi. Is it possible to get the bio and speaker information before Mondays?
Yeah, my fault. Sometimes I've been delayed in asking them, and sometimes they haven't given them to me. So yeah, I will do a better job on that, and I will pester people to get them.
That would be helpful. Thanks.
So I will do my best on that. Sorry. Anyone else?
Greg, it's Patrick. I just had the first deliverable that we have is by next Wednesday, correct?
Actually, I believe it's next Tuesday, the 24th.
Okay.
But you're right. It's next week.
Thank you.
Any others, folks? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think this is a good example of what I want this class to be. It's basically taking, people from the field that have, done things that probably most of us, if not all of us, haven't done before, and then sharing their experience and their own unique perspectives. I think Jeanette is very unique in that regard. She definitely thinks differently. So thanks again, and I'll see you online, and definitely see you next week. Bye-bye.